The Vampire's Lament, Book 1, Bloody Memories. Copyright Linda Vailing, 2014. Chapter 1, A Broken Heart. Angie, don't you think it's about time for you to stop moping around and actually do something with your life? My mother asked sharply. No, I replied bluntly. We both sat at the tiny round table that took up most of the room in my mother's galley-sized kitchen. She had to bring in a chair from the other room in order to sit down with me. Right now she was wedged between the table and the oven, and I wondered how she was going to get up when the time came. Mom was closer to 50 than 40, sharp-eyed with short black hair cut stylishly. She kept herself active and ate right, staving off osteoporosis as much as she could. She lived alone in her Queens apartment. That is, until I dropped in a week ago and immediately crashed on the couch. Since then, I hadn't left the building, and barely left the couch. I didn't look at her. I looked down at the bowl of cereal on the table that I wasn't eating. I moved the soggy chocolate pieces around with my spoon and watched the milk slowly turn brown. There was a fading bruise on my knuckles. Mom tried a gentler approach. It wasn't her strong suit, but yelling at me all week hadn't worked. Don't you think it's time you went back to school? I told you I'm not going back there, I replied dully. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see Mom's hands on the table. They were folded together tightly. They trembled with the effort of keeping her emotions in check. Do you really plan on throwing your whole life away because of a boy? Her words were quiet, but tight. I'm not throwing away much. The only reason I went to that school was because of him. You're being stupid, Mom shouted, slamming one hand down on the table. You're wasting your potential over something as foolish as a broken heart. I sat up quickly. My chair banged into the cupboards behind me. Both hands were tensely planted on the tabletop. My mother blinked at me in surprise. I know it's stupid, I shouted. I know I'm being foolish. It's my broken heart, and it's not like I could just turn it off. She gave me a calculating look, but didn't answer. I turned and headed for the door. I'm going out. At the door, I pulled a light jacket off the hook. It belonged to my brother. It was late November, but warm, so I didn't need my green winter coat. You didn't tell Chris that I left school, right? I asked, facing the door as I slipped an arm through one of the sleeves. I thought I would leave that up to you. I was hoping you would change your mind before he comes back. I opened the door and walked out into the hall, letting it close behind me. The sound followed my heels as I ran to the stairs. Once upon a time, I hated firearms. On television, they were loud and deadly. The PSAs inserted strategically between my favorite shows were worse. Always with some little kid digging through their parents' stuff and finding their gun. The screen always went black at that moment. I hated firearms because they scared the bejeebus out of me. Someone had taught me in recent months how to temper that fear into respect. He had taken apart a 9mm, shown me all the pieces and how they worked together. After that, he had taken me down to the range and let me try one out for myself. I'd done it because I loved him, and I'd wanted to be wherever he was and love the things he loved. With all my heart, I had tried my best to do something that I hated. Now, as I pumped rounds into the paper target hanging in the distance, all I could see was his face. I needed a break. I needed to clear my head. This wasn't helping. This was doing the opposite of helping. There were a couple of vending machines out front. Some sugar would help. I had just cracked open a soda when a man in a dark suit approached me. He was dressed impeccably, not a thread out of place. He wore no overcoat, even though it was November. He carried a leather briefcase. Strangely, his hands were clad in black leather gloves, and he wore dark designer sunglasses. His hair was black and slicked back to the point of reflecting light. I moved to the side, thinking he wanted something out of the machine. Instead, he stopped right in front of me. You are Evangeline Staton, he stated. What do you want with me? I wasn't in the mood to waste words, especially on someone that called me Evangeline. It showed that they didn't know me, like telemarketers and credit card offers in the mail. My name is Lucian, David Lucian. A business card appeared in his hand, held out towards me. I took it reflexively. You're a lawyer. My stomach dropped. Am I being sued? Jackson and I hadn't exactly parted ways as friends. I wondered briefly how his nose was healing. Oh, on the contrary, I'm an estate lawyer. He removed his sunglasses, revealing dark, piercing eyes. That threw me off. Whose estate? Katrina Riley's. Who? She was your grandmother's sister, your great-aunt. Great-aunt Katrina. The memory came back to me. Grandma Alice's older sister. Crazy Katrina, my grandfather called her. I had never met her in person, but Mom had a few times when she was young. She's dead? I would have to let Mom know. How would she take it? She died just last week. His voice was solemn, but it lacked any trace of sympathy. His dark eyes held no emotion, merely observing mine. What about the funeral? I asked in surprise. Miss Riley's will stressed that there be no funeral services. None? At all? I was really starting to dislike this man. How had he found me here anyway? Well, why are you bringing this up to me? Katrina's closest family is my grandmother. My mom, Vivian Eklund, has power of attorney since she moved back to Puerto Rico. Evangeline Stanton is the name specified in Miss Riley's will, David Lucian explained. You alone inherit all of her assets. I scrutinized Mr. Lucian's business card more closely, so I wouldn't have to keep looking at his apathetic eyes. Why me? Why would she leave her stuff to someone she's never met? The lawyer shrugged. It'd be arrogant of me to claim to know the inner workings of Katrina Riley's mind, but perhaps it's the resemblance. He reached into his pocket and retrieved a small square of photo paper. He held it out to me. It was an old photo printed on new paper. It was a simple portrait of a young woman with long hair. It was sepia-toned, so I could not discern the color, but it was neither light nor dark. Her face was thinner, the lines of her jaw sharper, but the resemblance to mine was unmistakable. I have the details of the estate with me for you to go over. I'll need your signature before the estate can be transferred to your name. I looked around the small area we stood in at the vending machines and the orange plastic chairs. What, right here? Yes, as soon as possible. His eyes flashed strangely, an odd reflection of delight. As I sat in one of the chairs, he placed his briefcase on the table and lowered himself beside me. He opened the case and retrieved a thick stack of paper. My eyebrows went up. Just how much did Great-Aunt Katrina have? While her assets were considerable, most of this is your contract. My contract? His eyes went back to mine as he handed over the papers. In order to inherit the full estate, you must follow a certain set of rules laid down by Miss Riley. I took the papers and flipped through them. All this? I read a few lines on a random page. I'm not allowed to repaint. Repaint what? The house. Miss Riley has left you her residence, which you must agree to reside in for a year. This was nuts, I thought, as I continued to skim through the papers. Not only did I have to live in the house, I couldn't change it in any way, nor could I sell it or have it demolished or even renovated. I went back to the first page and placed my hand on the top of the stack, so I didn't have to look at it anymore. It was too much to deal with all at once. I'll have to talk about this with my mother, I told him. You're 19. You're capable of making the right choice yourself. He held out a gold pen to me. If I'm going to be living somewhere new for a year, I really think I should discuss it with my mom first. I placed the papers on top of his briefcase. His eyes bore into me. You're an adult now, Evangeline. I wanted to look away, but just couldn't break his gaze. Slowly I reached out and accepted the pen. Mom will probably be glad to get rid of me, I mumbled as I went to the last page of the stack and scrawled my name on the line at the bottom. In a swift movement, the papers and pen were gone from my hands, tucked away safely into the briefcase. Mr. Lucian was standing, holding out a manila envelope. This is everything you'll need. I'll visit you at the house in 1 week to see how you're adjusting. I took the envelope, staring blankly at it as he walked away. Once he was gone, I shook myself, clearing the cobwebs that had temporarily taken residence in my head.